Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Eric Termuende. Eric is a good friend of mine. I think the first time we spoke, it was what, 3 years ago, I think,
I
probably.
think so.
Eric is a young man now, but at that time he made a revolution by writing a book, Rethinking Work. And he was, what, 24 at that time.
That's right.
And to be honest, for someone who is rethinking work, being at 24, I thought it cannot be right. It's something like, and I've read the book and I love the book. And I actually offered it to the Russian publisher and they, for whatever reason, they said, no, not yet. But I personally feel that it's a tremendous book. So Eric is the best-selling author. Book is very popular. I think a book foreseen a lot of things which are happening now with work, with leadership, with the corporate culture, with soft skills which we need for the future work. And that's a wonderful book. And I hope you have a chance to read it. Eric is a famous speaker now. He is known not only in Canada, where he lives, but more and more in Europe and of course in the United States. Eric was owner of 2 companies, so he's not just talking, he actually was doing things, doing business, and I think you sold those companies right now?
That's right.
Yeah, so you sold your companies at a profit, and now you are devoting your time by thinking and predicting what future can bring to us. Is it correct?
Yeah, that's it for sure.
Right. So future of work. Tell me what future of work can bring, because with all these disruptions, we see every one of us feels that future is going to be very different to what we used to have.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great to have your friendship and partnership over the years, and I'm truly honored to be able to have this conversation with you and to share with your audience, of course. When I look at the future of work, I'm an eternal optimist, perhaps even an idealist, and I see profound happiness, fulfillment, joy, belonging, a sense of community and camaraderie. I see potential and hope. When I wrote Rethink Work, there was a state, at least in North America, of work that was really negative, really pessimistic, where on Monday morning we would drag our heels to work and have slouched over with no energy. And on Friday afternoon, we'd skip out of the office and run into the weekend. On Wednesday, that's right, TGIF, of course. And on Wednesday, we would call it hump day because we're over the hump and we're halfway through. What bothered me is that nobody thought that was a problem. That nobody thought that it was a problem, that work was something that we universally accepted to hate. And I thought, if we're working more than we're doing anything else in a week, including sleep, it may as well be something that we enjoy. Now, in the past months, we've seen a global pandemic do incredible destruction across the world. It has forced innovation and change in the working world more so in the past, I would say, 100 days than the past, I would argue, 5 years. And what we're seeing now is this decentralization of the workplace so that people can do their work more commonly, more effectively, arguably, from anywhere that they can get it done. Now, I've seen this change be quite dramatic and quite turbulent for many, but this adjustment, again, because of the speed, is happening so fast that we're still adjusting and getting used to it. But I see in the next 6 months, barring any sort of continued catastrophe, that we're going to settle into what folks are describing as a new normal. I don't like the idea of a new normal. I don't like the idea of normal in general. I think just this idea of a new best, which is unique to each of us, and we'll get into that shortly, that allows us to do our work how we want to do it, when we want to do it, and where we want to do it. Now that's a luxury that we have yet to see. But as we get used to this new best, and we get to apply these new practices, imagine the freedom that we'll have to do our best work with the people that we want to do it with, from where we want to do that work, and ultimately how we want to do it too. I see the future as very bright, very optimistic. Now, to be fair, it's not going to come without challenge as we figure it out along the way, but I'm very excited about what the future holds.
Yeah, but we should prepare for the future, right? And we should change education system. Education system, for example, my kids were having almost whole semester online. And
Hmm.
I found it's good because I think
Hmm.
during 1.5 hour of tuition online, they could get as much information as spending the half day at school, because it
Hmm.
was focused. It was kind of, I mean, of course, the social thing we're missing, etc., and friends, etc. But as for information as such and teaching as such, it was okay. So I think the whole education, but at the same time, the whole education system must be really changed as well, right? So it's a whole chain of changes which would lead to the
Yeah.
future of work.
What COVID has taught me is that there are really two types of innovation. Number one, innovation is forced, or number two, innovation is chosen. Now, some organizations that do it really well. In fact, we were actually talking about Booking.com earlier. Booking.com, actually, if you and I were to both go onto Booking.com's website today, neither of us would see the exact same homepage that we landed on. Because throughout about 1 day's worth of time, Booking.com is testing about 1 million different landing pages that both you and I would visit. Because what they're trying to do every step along the way is they're trying to see what converts best, what is the most user-friendly, what do our users enjoy most in terms of aesthetics and what they're looking at. And they're learning and learning and learning and learning, not because they feel that they have to, but because they feel that they're trying to get ahead. They're trying to be better. They're trying to optimize what's coming next. In other words, they're choosing to innovate. Now, on the flip side of that, many organizations, especially in this COVID time, have been forced to innovate. So we're forced to be remote because we couldn't be in the office. We're forced to make changes and go online when we were traditionally brick and mortar. We're forced to do these things simply to stay alive. Now, a lot of what you're discussing about when it comes to education too is not chosen innovation, it's forced innovation. And what I would invite organizations post-secondary to do now is to take the innovation they were forced to make and continue on that road to choose to innovate further. So yes, we're home. Yes, these courses might be an hour and a half and our students might be getting a lot more information out of it. Yes, we might be working from home and we might be able to communicate a little bit different, utilize new technologies. But my question is, what's next? Right? How can we continue to move the needle forward and ultimately discover what's best for our people, what's best for our productivity, and what's best for our bottom line? And if I could, I've actually got a couple questions for those listening that you want to be able to ask.
Mhm.
And here's how you can tell. If you're being forced to innovate, what the question that you'd be asking yourself is, what is our competitor doing, right? Or what is somebody else in our market doing? Because what that signifies is that we're behind and we're forced to keep up and we're comparing ourselves to somebody who's further ahead. Now, if we're choosing to innovate, the question that we'll be asking ourselves, and the question that I want you to ask yourself as a listener, is what can we do to get ahead? What is it that will put us out of business? What is it that will allow or require our students to go to a different school that we're not doing? And when we can choose to innovate, when we can choose to do things that nobody else is thinking about, when we choose to decide to try and put ourselves out of business with our own creativity and innovation, that's when we'll be able to blaze a new trail, create a new path, and ultimately discover what's best for us. I think Booking.com continues to do that on a daily basis, where they're not saying, what is Expedia doing or what is Trivago doing? They're saying, what can we do differently by going through these uncharted territories, these uncharted waters, and ultimately learning and discovering for ourselves what works and what doesn't. Now, the last thing I'll say on that point is this requirement to fail. Now, if Booking.com goes through 1 million different web pages a day, well, 99.9% of those web pages would be considered a failure because they didn't optimize or convert better. But all we care about are the examples that do perform better and what they'll be able to convert because of that. Now, look, if you fail 9 times out of 10, but that 10th time is worth 100 times of the 9 fails, then it's a really good investment. And we have to shift our thinking from what if we fail to what is the cost of not learning as we go through this process along the way. When we look at the multiplier and the bottom line contribution of that ability to learn and to multiply as a result, I think that choice of innovation becomes very clear. we actually become scared of or adverse to being forced to innovate, and we build this culture of experimentation, which I think is absolutely undervalued, especially in these times.
It's interesting that we used to say that there are, under normal circumstances, sort of without Corona, I mean, about 10% of companies or 15% of companies are truly innovative, the market leaders, and the rest just follow the trend. And the same thing is happening now. I mean, a lot of companies, and you're absolutely right, looking around what other people are doing, myself including. You know, I'm looking what other bloggers doing, what other thing. And okay, I should not give a toss. I mean, I should have my values, my message, what I strongly feel I should have, and then go forward, and then let them to look at what Gennady is doing, or some other innovative companies. And Booking.com is a good example. And that's, you know, Jeff, I know Jeff Hoffman, and actually he is one of
course.
Good recently. And that's the way he is. He is like white guy. He knows what he is doing. That's it. You know, and he's following his course, what he believes is right. So this is very important. But then we have come back to the point in discovering our values. You know, what really, because I mean, you cannot be that confident if you don't have strong, how can I say, values and ego that you know what you're doing. And how you, now we're talking about leaders now, right? Leadership.
Well, that's right. And I don't know Jeff personally, but I would guess one of his values is likely curiosity. One of his values is likely growth and discovery, which might be synonymous. But what Jeff inevitably has had to do to get to where he is today is he's had to build failure and discovery into the process. You know, as a leader, I think the first thing we have to do is actually remove that ego and recognize that failure will be a part of the process. You know, something that I like to say is that the road to success is paved with the failures along the way. And I think those organizations who are taking those steps, who are in action all of the time, are the only ones that are going to be able to realize it. Maybe I'll share this with you. I find that life is very comparable to a combination lock. You know, the three combinations, the 0 to 60, something like that. When it comes to innovation, very often we don't have the combination for the lock, right? But the difference between those who succeed and those who fail is those who fail see the lock and know they don't have the combination and don't spin it because they think that they'll never get it right. Those who succeed will spin the lock with every combination until they get it right and ultimately unlock the lock. Now, you can perceive all of the missed combinations first as failure, or you can see them as enough combinations wrong, learning that that's not one of the combinations that'll be right, and ultimately getting that lock unlocked. See, Thomas Edison was quoted in saying when he invented the light bulb, he said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I learned 10,000 ways how to not make a light bulb. And when we shift our thinking, when it comes to culture and innovation, to not failure, but learning how to not do something, then I think it's equally valuable to learn what doesn't work from learning what does and figure out ultimately the path forward that's best for us.
Right. And of course, tenacity and persistence and greed, I think very, very important.
Absolutely.
But at the same
time,
there's another, so I like your allegory with the lock, but at the same time, you know, there's another allegory when you climb hard on the ladder and only to realize that it leads to a kind of dead wall. And that's another thing. I mean, a lot of people are working very hard. And I remember I was very much in favor of books on those people who was, you know, looking for treasures, you know, from pirates, you know, hidden in some.
Sure.
And some people spend all their life digging, you know, looking for the treasure, and then they never found it. And so it's like you to identify really what is right. So it's failure, yes, and I fully agree. And we have to really take failure. I mean, even the word itself, failure, is wrong, right? It's a learning experience. It's a feedback.
That's right.
But then to kind of to identify the course right, and this is another thing. And then we have to revalue them. You know, it's like with a strategy. It's not caved in stone. You know, it must be revalued every time when we move. So there's a failure. We have to get feedback, and then do something different. You know, fine tune all the time. And I think that's even, you know, better.
Well, and I think you hit on something really, really, really important there too. And what I would suggest is those companies who are doing innovation right, when it comes to product or service or culture or any combination, or marketing or sales or whatever that might be. They're not just climbing one ladder, they're climbing 100 different ladders and 100 different walls. And when they figure out the one that gets them out of the hole, everyone crowds towards that ladder and they can run for the hills and be rich, if that's the way we want to look at it. But I think you hit on something really important, and something that I don't think enough companies are doing often enough. And that's that evaluation process. The last thing that we want to do is go blindly down a trail with our eyes closed and a blindfold on, and realize 2 years later that we've been on the wrong trail the whole time. I think that evaluation process and putting numbers and metrics behind to sort of gauge success along the way is very important, and something that I don't think enough companies are doing, which sort of leads us to the soft skill side of things. When we're talking about workplace culture and building great teams, we think in many cases that the annual engagement survey is enough. And the truth is, that's like going for a drive without a map and realizing 6 hours in with an empty tank of gas that you weren't going the right direction and you're stuck. See, what I would rather see along the way, much like when we're driving with a map, whether it be our Maps app or something physical, we're checking all along the way to make sure, okay, well, we just passed that sign. Are we on the right track? Our fuel gauge is 3/4 full. Are we still going to be able to make it to our destination? And what we kind of take for granted is that we're doing all these checks and balances every time we go on a road trip. When we look at workplace culture, how often are we checking in with our team with little pulse checks? Do you feel trusted? Do you feel like the team is moving in the right direction? Do you feel connected with your people? How can we ultimately create a more holistic experience that's great for all of us? But if we don't put those checks and balances in on a regular basis, I don't think we're going to get to where we want to go. Now, to be clear, this doesn't require a 1-hour survey every week and we hold each other's hands and sing songs and everything like that. No, this just requires to say, hey, how are you doing? And a pause and the opportunity to listen and take it in. Say, oh, great. Okay. What do you think we can do about that? Listen, take it in, and really just internalize what's being said. And start to put little tweaks in motion, which leads me to something that I've been talking about for the last couple of years now, is this idea of a 1-degree shift. And that's the sort of innovation and change that I think we should be making. We shouldn't get to the end of the rope and think, oh, we've been going the wrong direction the whole time, and do a 180-degree turn and head back. No. Instead, if we put these little checks and balances in along the way, that what we could do is make little 1-degree shifts and pivot and change over and over and over again until we reach our destination. So in the interest of practicality, in the interest of takeaways, how you would find out what questions to ask when we're making those pivots is very simple. The first question is, where are we experiencing friction? So if it's communication between two people, we might feel a sense of friction if the communication isn't strong. If the product isn't picking up, maybe that's some sort of friction we'll be experiencing. The second question that we should ask is, what should we do about it? What does the textbook say, or what does our intuition say we should be doing about it? And once we sort of determine what that might be, we've likely realized that we've already started to try it, because we're trying to reduce that friction all the time. So the third question is, where is that going wrong? And if it's a communication point, and what we're supposed to be doing is talking about it, and where that's going wrong is it's not going anywhere. The fourth question I think we should ask is, where is it really going wrong? And what we're going to find is that when we really peel one layer back and discover that it's something internal, very likely, that we need to work on, then the fifth question is, what is the smallest viable change that we can make to reduce some of this friction? So maybe it's me showing up a little bit earlier, or being a little bit better prepared so that you can gain my trust again, because you know that I'm committed to the craft. But if we can make those little 1-degree shifts along the way over and over and over again, then we're always in this constant state of innovation, of learning, of growth and development. And we get to co-create wherever it is we're going together, because we're putting these measurement and evaluation tactics in place along the way.
It's great, but that requires a constant having sort of your fingers on pulse as a leader. So you have to be on the shopping floor. I mean, all the time. I never forget, I was working as a consultant in one of the Russian companies in some metallurgical plant. And when we were talking to people, like in their own environment, they were talking, oh, we have to change this, and this bastard should be fired, and this and that. And then we said, oh, great, we'll make a, brainstorming, like according to the book. I brought these people to a room and I said, hey guys, you talk. You talk
Mm-hmm.
now. And it took me 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, nobody was daring to talk. So you
Right.
really, as you're absolutely right, you have to be at the working place with that particular person, asking simple questions and listening. And I think
Mm-hmm.
this is the really key to the whole thing, is really listening creatively, in kind of, and then really not just dismissing things which
Mm-hmm.
might be, a problem, like
That's right.
friction, what you said.
Well, we have to recognize too that these changes aren't going to happen overnight. That, if we have a 2-hour meeting with our team and all of these laundry lists of things come up, really nobody expects overnight these things to happen.
Mm.
So long as we can see incremental change, progress, that we're being heard, that we're being listened to, and ultimately that things are being acted upon. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human. And so long as we see that we're working to a better, what I would argue, a more intentional future, I think that people are quite forgiving, quite sympathetic, quite empathetic, and can ultimately help us along the journey, knowing that we're taking action based on what our people have said and the feedback that we've heard from them.
Yes, and of course it's easy, like everything in life, it's easy to say than to do, because I recalling my experience when I was working as a general consultant in the company with 40 plus women. I mean, I don't want to sound
Mm-hmm.
sexist, but I couldn't handle it. I mean, I was putting two ladies together and said, okay, let's discuss your problems. What I was trying to do, a sympathetic leader, and I failed. In half year I've left. Very, very good position, but I just failed
Mm-hmm.
as a leader. So I couldn't handle the whole, the environment of gossips and talks and psychology and, etc. So yes, but that's another
Well,
story. I think leaders have to be prepared better than I was.
yeah. Well, I think you really hit on something too. In America today, the best company to work for is Hilton Hotel Chain. One of the big hotel chains in America. The second best place to work in America is a company called Ultimate Software. So a big computer software company. And we don't need to get into the nuances of the two companies. What we need to understand is one of them is a hotel and the other is a software company. The best and the second best place to work in the country. Now, this doesn't mean that somebody at the software company would want to work at a hotel and somebody at a hotel would want to work at a software company. That's not necessarily true at all, but they're both great places to work for their people. And really, as we move forward, as we onboard new talent, and as we try and build great places to work, what companies, what teams, what individuals need to understand is that we don't need to have ball pits and kegs and dogs in our office, or we don't necessarily need to be remote and flex. What we need to do is to understand the environment that works best for our people and attract people that want a similar environment and a similar experience. Now, look, what works for me might not work for you, and that's okay. We can both work in great organizations, and we can both truly enjoy the work that we do and the people that we're with. But if we were to switch spots, that doesn't mean that either of us would be happy despite both working in great organizations. And so when we're trying to attract this next generation, whether it be millennials or Gen Z or whoever that might be, what we have to do is to get away from thinking that millennials or Gen Z or females or males like any one type of environment. That's simply not true. What we need to do instead is to say, here's the exact experience that you can expect when you're working here. Is this something that you might be interested in? Now, this doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the fundamental skills, requirements, education. Of course, that's all extremely important, always has been, always will be. The differentiator, though, is what we're not talking about enough, and that's that workplace experience. Are we remote or are we in the office? Are we working in teams or are we working as individuals? Do you write 150 emails a day or are you spending 4 hours a day on the phone? Are you in the boardroom writing on the whiteboard all day, or are you sitting on your computer working on a program? There's no best, but there is a right for you and a right for me. And the more we can understand what that right looks like, the better story we can tell to attract better talent moving forward.
Right. I think it's absolutely right, because the environment for, let's say, some consulting companies, like McKinsey, for example, could not be the right environment for some creative, inspirational, something artistic, or environment in
Right.
the military. In the military might not be, proper environment for like 99%
No,
of people, I think. But
that's right.
it's really so for you have to find people have to find their own culture, company culture, which will really they would fit. And that's another thing. And then it's the question for not only you finding the right company, it's for companies to select the right people.
That's it. No, that's it. The average job description right now is 250 to 300 words. It's nearly impossible to truly understand what a prospective employee is signing up for when all we're reading on the job description are the skills, the requirements, and the education needed to do the job. Now, I'll say it again. These are important. They always have been, and they always will be. But that experiential part, the thing that we're not talking about when it comes to attracting talent, is what we're missing. Now, what can we do about it in the interest of takeaways and action items? How about a 30-second, a 1 minute, a 1.5 minute video tour of the office? How about an interview on the job description connected to a video platform site of an interview with one of your would-be teammates to get a better understanding? How about a 30-minute virtual video conference, or if it's safe, a coffee or a lunch with somebody who would be on your immediate team? These are the steps that I think are really missing in the current recruiting process, because what happens is if you and I get together for a coffee and I get to ask you about what work is like, what life is like outside of work, how many times you've left the country, what your weekends look like, how much overtime you're working, how you like to get your work done, I'm going to learn more in that 30 minutes with you than I ever would on a company about me page or like a careers page or anything like that. And I think the onus or the obligation is on the organization to put more time in up front to determine with these individuals who are going to be spending maybe 5-10 years with us, if it's going to be a good fit. I mean, tenure is shorter than it's ever been before. And that's because I think we live in this world of so much accessibility to information, but not complete information. Like, yes, there might be an incredible opportunity that totally aligns with our skill set. But if we don't like the city that we might be moving to, or, the overtime hours that we might have to work if we've got a young 2-year-old at home, then that's not going to be a good fit regardless of how aligned we are in skills. And again, I think when we look at this recruiting process, it's just as important to signal who isn't a fit as it is who is a fit. Much like that innovative practice we talked about, what doesn't work from what does work, and we learn in both cases.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Because I think there is I remember I was applying for the job and I went through interviews and everything seems to be quite nice. And then I met, some old friend of mine and asked for a coffee. And she said, never, ever, it's terrible company. You have to be, you're going to be exploited. And I followed that conversation more than all this, I think, 3 days of interviews. And another thing I'd like to draw a parallel. Now this marriage counseling, they're saying that when you are meeting someone, try not to be your best. I mean, our intention to be best and nice and cool, etc. Because that gives the ideal, impression of you. And when life starts, then that person will be matching your ideal, mating period to what actually, you are. And the same with the companies. And that's kind of ball into the company's court as well. So to show, yes, we have this, but you might have, work long hours and etc. there. So be more open, not like really, because catching someone is not good enough. Kind of keeping the person, that's another ball game. And sometimes, of course, and companies are spending fortune on outsourcing or doing their own recruitment, and then actually people are leaving.
Well, I think that's it. And I think to summarize what we're talking about is we're not just looking for what, as in like the skill sets, what these people can do. We're also looking for who these people are, ultimately what they like to do on their day-to-day, how they like to get their work done. I'll give you a quick story. One of my friends last year, well, it was about 1.5 years ago. She broke up with her boyfriend and she turned to online dating. So one of the apps where you swipe. And, she was looking for a male roughly her age. More than anything in the world, she liked hiking. She hiked about 60, 65 days a year. And so she was swiping and she was looking for a male roughly her age. So, a male 28 to 33 or something like that. And so she was swiping because that's what she was interested in. And she went on date after date after date after date. And she was so frustrated because she saw, they were males, they were, she thought they were attractive, they were the right age, they checked off all the boxes. That's what they were. They were all the things that she wanted. But she was so frustrated because when she got to meeting them, she thought there was no connection, there was no spark. And I said to her, I said, hey, why don't you go try the hiking club? Just go with the club and see who you might meet. Well, six months ago, she got engaged to the president of the hiking club, not just because of what he was, because of who he was, and ultimately what he liked to do and how he liked to live his life and how that was so aligned with her. I think companies are doing that too. They're talking about what people are. We're looking for these skills, these requirements, this education. That's great. We still need that. But what we're missing is who these people are and ultimately how they like to get their work done and what environment they like to be a part of. And when we can make that shift from what we're attracting to who we're attracting, that's when I think, to your point, not only can we attract people, but we can keep them too.
Right. So what you would suggest and what you'd recommend as an expert in future of work to young people who are, watching my program? So what you would suggest those who will be, getting to the marketplace now, for example, or in a couple of years from now?
I would say meaningfully connect with as many people as possible. I'm sure you do. I get it all the time. The inbox messages, I'm a young professional looking to build my great network. Do you have time for a call? And the answer for me is always no. But if somebody comes with a specific question, hey, Eric, I really loved your book and I really liked your TED Talk. I wonder, I have one question about this certain thing. Could I ask you over a 5-minute phone call and just sort of get a better response? Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, they watched my talk, they read my book, they're invested and interested in what I'm doing, and they've got a specific question that they think that I'd be the perfect person to help them with. Of course. The best people after that, though, once we've had that conversation, are the ones that say this: is there anyone that you could connect me to that might be able to help me further with this? And now what they've done is they've taken my whole network and they've narrowed it down to that one person that they could talk to next. See, when I moved into a new city here, what I did is I met with the 3 people that I knew. I knew nobody in this city. And after meeting with those 3 people, I asked each of them, are there 3 people that you could connect me with that I could learn more about this topic about? And so these 3 people turned into 9. Those 9 people turned into 27. The 27 people turned into 81. And within 6 months, I had well networked the entire city, at least in my specific space. But I was specific. I wanted to meet with people. I put the time in to understand who they were and how they were adding value to their community and to their city and to their organization. And I was really specific about what it was that I wanted to learn from them. I tried to give first and act second, and knew that in many cases, going the long way is actually the shortcut. We try and do these hacks and these cuts and shortcuts, and we try and just sort of take the shortest route possible. I think what we learned very quickly in this space and any others is that when we do the work, we truly get to where we're wanting to go faster than trying to take these shortcuts and cut corners along the way.
Right. Well, that's a great message, because I've met, this platform on my YouTube channel. I had a lot of people, and a lot of them were saying about the power of small talk. Power of small talk, when you meet someone, informally, and you learn so much. And I think this really it's not pragmatic networking, like, I give you this and you give me that, but it's really interested in people. And people, I'm sure that you feel very good when you help someone. You feel better than somebody who help you, because sharing is part of our genes.
That's right.
And I have the same stories. And somebody, young people, come to me and saying, Gennady, well, I've seen this and that. Could you please advise me? Or let's go for. And I always say yes. And before, and I was doing the same thing with the bigger guys. I was talking to some billionaires and I said, well, thank you. Could you recommend me someone? And say, yes, Gennady, of course. And there's a guy. Of course. And people are asking, how do you manage to get all these people, into your network? But because I'm genuinely interested and my intentions are good. I want to share what they know to my audience, and that works.
I'll give you just a really quick something that came to mind. About 6 years ago, I did a trip down the east coast of Australia. We started in Brisbane and went down to Tasmania. It was an incredible trip, but at the time I didn't have as much money as I would have liked, and I was looking for the cheap way to get around. The domestic airlines in Australia are actually cheaper than taking a bus from place to place to place. And so I would fly from Brisbane down to Melbourne, to Sydney, down to Hobart in Tasmania, and really hit all the big cities. Now, the problem was I left the country feeling like I had missed the spaces in between. When you're looking down at a country from 35,000 feet, it all looks the same. Every airport looks the same, all the restaurants and the baguettes and all the things in the washrooms, the seats, they're all the same pretty much in every country. And what I realized is I had missed the spaces in between. I had missed the true heartbeat of the country. And what I've come to realize is that we do the same thing in meetings, especially when we're remote and flexible. We've got the host that's waiting to let you in until the top of the hour. We get straight into the content. We talk about it for 30, 45, 60 minutes. We get out, we get straight into the next meeting. And to your point, we miss the small talk. In my language, we miss the space in between. We miss that opportunity to connect, to express interest, to build trust, to get to learn about who we are as individuals. Now, again, I'm not saying we need to hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and just like really pour each other's hearts out. I'm saying, no, what did you get up to this weekend? What are you excited about this week ahead? Is there anything that I can help you with outside of work? And when we take those 1, 2, 3 minutes to sort of clear the air, let everyone relax and settle into the conversation a little bit, then get our work done, close it off with maybe something personal, then I don't want us to think that it's all business. It's all human connection, which then results in better business. See, we like to think that businesses make decisions. Businesses do not make decisions. Teams do. And teams do not make decisions. People do. And people make best decisions when they feel best connected with the people around them. And so when we're going from airport to airport, instead of taking the bus in between, when we're going from meeting to meeting without connecting with people in between, without recognizing the importance of that small talk, the opportunity to connect, we're actually missing the heartbeat of the team, the heartbeat of the company, the heartbeat of the people that are in the company that are driving the decisions and driving the bottom line. And so I would probably leave you with this. If you want to get to where you're going, don't take the shortcut, take the long way. And if we take the long way, we'll find that we'll get to where we're going faster and enjoy the ride that much more.
Wonderful. One thing which I would say about you, and again, I reinforce it, that when I listen to you, I have a feeling that before me is much, much older man, which is a compliment to you. I think you have great, incredible potential. I mean, the way you kind of summarize and feel things and you can share them is incredible. And I'm happy to know you. And I'm sure that when our next interview, you'll be where you are, but definitely you'll be more kind of, I don't know, I wish you to be more recognized, and I'd like your message to be heard by more people, because what you're saying is absolutely right. And my heart cries when I hear that, because I think this is the essence. It's never business to business. It's people to people all the time.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Thank you very much.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. Appreciate your friendship over the past years, and looking forward to years more coming ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. Yeah. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.